I'm gonna divide my talk into three phases of my life, and those three phases are three steps through which I came up with my unique language. So, to communicate, like actually to communicate with your fellow people, your social circle, you need to develop a language. Now, my whole life, my whole career has been actually finding that language. The first phase was growing up in a small city called Guwahati in Assam. So you must know about my place because growing up, it was very difficult. Like we had a lot of insurgencies, we had a lot of political issues, and we were like under constant rule of one form or the other. There was not much freedom where I grew up. And because of that reason, most of us, like kids, we tend to find our own voice, which is very rebellious in its nature. Like we would like for example, my favorite band is Rage Against the Machine, and we only like go for metal concerts. We kind of find a voice which was against the system. So now in my school, I was a misfit. I didn't fit in with any of the crowd. I was not good in studies. I was not good in sports. But then during that whole phase, I found out this unique thing called comic books. And I saw how beautiful and how divine that whole world is. Like it's fantasy. Whatever you can't be in real life, you can be in that panel in like as a superhero, as someone who will come out and save the day. So I started studying it. I started mimicking and copying that particular art style of comic book inking, drawing. And that was the first step of me learning the alphabets to that language, was through mimicking. And if you take alphabets also, like it's a drawing, like A, B, C, D, how do you teach that to a kid? The kid has to mimic those alphabets, memorize them. And it's a drawing process. So for me, those A, B, C, D were those comic book characters. Now, during that time, I learned like the whole alphabets for the language. And it went on till class 10, like 9th standard, where I was just copying art forms, I was copying comic books and just selling it to my friends. Like, there you go, entrepreneurial skills right there. So for extra few bucks to buy more comic books and probably chips and some candies. And so I was doing that for the longest time, and then trying to fit in with the crowd, making art and selling it to other people. And basically that kind of gave me validation. And I was trying to seek that, like, and nobody got it. Like, neither did my parents, because where I come from, there's no idea about art and design. Literally, the people are really oblivious to the fact that there is a whole industry of art and design that exists. And now, fast forward to my teenage days, like I'm still a misfit. I'm still trying to find my crowd, my people. So I got into science, where I found like other friends who were like metal musicians. They were into like heavy metal music, and I always wanted to be a musician, but unfortunately I'm not gifted in that space at all. I can't sing, I can't play any instrument. So that time I realized something. Again, I was the misfit and I wanted to fit in that crowd. And I saw this other bunch of misfits who are again like as a collective. Now what happened is I had this knowledge of the words, those ABC, the drawing skills that I had picked up as a kid. Now I use those skills to actually communicate with one more group of misfits. Now you see I have a collective of misfits around me. Now that's called a niche. So at that point I figured out that this is a group of people who always are trying to stand out. They're always trying to say something, express something, and they really don't care what others think about them. So I instantly gravitated towards that. And then I started like combining those skills. Now those alphabets, A, B, C, D, as I learned, like the things that I learned as a kid, I started forming sentences using those skills. Now those drawing, those style, those stuff, I started making words by forming sentences by making album artworks for those bands who wanted a visual expression. Now that's another mode of communication. Now I was championing and I was communicating with a group of misfits who found it hard to communicate, bringing it out there and showing it to the other people around us, so that we as a group are able to communicate further. Now you must understand that any art form needs an observer. Any art form without the observer is like God and the believer conundrum. Like if you like, does God exist if you don't have the worshippers or the devotees, or will the devotees exist without the God? So similarly, for any art form, you need the observer. So I figured, if this group of people, they need an expression, they need an observer, so do I. So who do I communicate with? I've already communicated with this bunch of misfits. I've already got my niche, I've already got my circle. I have a visual identity. Those are the sentences. Now it's time for me to communicate with like further people, bring out the message and communicate it and take it further. Now in the third most phase, now that was the second phase when I started forming sentences, started making album artworks, and basically got good at composing things. Third phase came during my college days. Now, like Hatusha said, like I was also forced into engineering. So it's a classic story of an engineer like breaking out of his mold and like wings and stuff like that. Yeah. So I took up engineering, and I was kind of forced to take up engineering. I did 2 years of chemical engineering because I was like inspired by Heisenberg, Breaking Bad. I got into mechanical because I was good in physics. Now, again, I was not fitting in with the engineering crowd. I failed in almost all my subjects except for the first year. I only passed in yoga and English and Chinese. Yeah, and then as the years progressed, I started picking up skills which were again helping me communicate. Now at this point, I was able to form sentences, and by sentences I mean like a very close-knit visual art forms which are only translating to certain group of people. It was not universal in nature. Now I had this humongous task to actually make this universal so that everyone can relate to it. So in my college days, I used to go for my classes, and my college was like really bad. Like it was really strict. Once you come in, you're not supposed to go out, and you have to stay inside the campus for like 8 hours straight. And there was like full attendance. My school was better than my college, to be honest. So 8 hours I had to sit in my class and practically didn't understand anything that went on. So I kept doodling, I kept drawing, I kept making up stories, I kept making up stuff that I'm observing in the classroom. And the teachers won't bother me because I would give them my drawing as a gift by the end of the class. And they're like, okay, bhai karo, jo karna hai karo, karte jao. So in my exams also, I would just sketch on my answer sheets, because we had to sit for 1 hour. You can't go out before that. So I would only make sketches during my... So I used to draw and I used to sketch. So what happened during that time, I was forced into a very disciplined environment. All this while I was kind of like a rebel, like fighting against the system, feeling being left out. But then later I understood, if I really had to break away from everything, I have to make everyone understand that this is my story and I want to break away from this, and I have this language, I have this need to communicate, and I want to communicate, I want to tell a story, I want to tell you the things that I have learned, but through my own medium and through my own vision, through my own language. So during that college days, I was forced to sit in my classroom and just make sketches. That's when I actually started combining those sentences. By the second phase, I knew how to combine alphabets, make words, form sentences. By the third phase, during my college days, I started composing, making stories visually. There was like a concept behind it. There was a narrative behind those drawings and the doodles that I was making. And I understood that before it was only my group of people who got my artwork. Now, when I observed my teachers, my professors taking interest in it, then I knew, okay, I have something close to being an universal entity and language which is transcending into the other crowd, like it's transcending into other circles. So I further started developing it furthermore. I started reading up more on like other stuff like philosophy, psychology, and metaphysics and all. I did a lot of studying during that, except for engineering. I did everything else. So I started studying those, and I started studying mangas. They're like completely different from what comic books had taught me. So I started getting deep into those things, and I started composing. I started making more artworks which are my own unique voice. They were no longer imitations of others' work, or it was no longer imitation of other album artworks or comic books. It was unique to my own self. Now, by the end of final year, fourth year, I was failing miserably in all of my subjects. We were just talking this morning. I had like this thick pile of back papers, like all mark sheets piling up, and I was like, okay, it's like do or die situation. What do I do? Like I can't like just quit it and just start something else anew. But what happened is a friend of mine suddenly tagged me in a very random post for Red Bull World Doodle Art Championship. Now, that point, I realized, okay, I have to take part, and this is my do or die situation. If I am able to prove everyone around me that my language is unique and I get validated at a global stage, I might be able to break away from this cycle of constant misunderstanding and constant misery, to be honest, because I got depressed. I was clinically depressed for the longest time. I was under medication, and it was not a good phase. So I took that opportunity. By this time, I had already developed this language of mine from phase A, B, C, starting from forming my, learning the alphabets, then forming sentences, and finally building my own narrative. I had an opportunity where I can use all of these three things that I've learned throughout my life and just take a shot at it. So I went for it. I won the national round, then I went for the international, and I won the international, and I became the first ever world champion in something so ridiculously minuscule, but like doodle art. Like, right, everyone loves to doodle, right? So, and then I took that opportunity, I became the world champion, then I had that validation from a global stage just to show everyone, okay, I am good at this. I can pursue this as a career. I have that experiment worked. Basically, my language did transcend at a global stage, and people got it. They understood it. That at that point, I understood I have something unique. I have a narrative. I have a language. I have a means of communication through which I can actually tell my story. And then from then, I started working with them. Now, like, I work with so many brands. I didn't even know how to draft an email, and I end up with a huge contract with Red Bull International for like a bizarre number. So I was like, okay, cool, I'm making some money now. So then what do I do now? After that, I just realized something. Throughout all of these three phases, building a language, understanding this, and like communicating with a group of misfits, and then transcending to the other masses, that all of this seems like a big screenplay or a story if you observe it from a third person view. And then and slowly at this point, I'm starting to realize something, is the fact that who is the protagonist of this, and what is the story going to, how is the story going to end? Then for the longest period of time, I thought I'm the misfit. I'm someone who needs to champion the misfits and be the protagonist of the story. But then as I grew older, as I started started my discipline in a much more structured way, I realized your art form is the protagonist. You're just the medium. Like the moment you think, okay, no, I'm the artist, I am this, that, no. I used to think like that as a teenager, but that doesn't work at all. Because what happens is your art will survive or use you to propagate and communicate. Now, the moment you die, your artwork's gonna inspire other people to create more stuff around those lines. So it's just that the only thing that is immortal is your art. That's why I consider the art form to be the protagonist of the story, and it's not me who's the main hero of this entire thing. And then what happens as you realize all of this at one step at a time, you are building a story and a narrative. Every brand has a story, right? And now you come to a phase where you start capitalizing on the story and the language that you have built. Now that's the importance about any brand or any visual language that you work with. It has a story to say, it has a niche. Now for me, my niche was being different. My niche was being the champion of the misfits. My niche was completely getting the subculture out to the main culture. Now, if you look around now, that has happened globally. Hip hop is a big thing right now. And suddenly in fashion, it has gone towards more goth and more metal inspired dressing sense. So what happens is the moment you start building your own narrative and your own story and you start believing in it, and these are small social experiments that you do around your peers and around the community that you are surrounded by, just to see if your language and your story translates and people can relate to it. And then you capitalize on that brand, that expression and that particular narrative that you have. Your story will pull in more people, more interest, more brands in. When I first started working, I just had like Red Bull as my client, but now I have Adidas, I have Dust of Gods, I have all the big MNCs as like one of my topmost clients, and I literally get to do whatever I want. If I want to draw some stuff for them, it doesn't matter if it's something obscure or anything, they're just okay with it because that's my story and my narrative. Thank you so much.